Hello, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I make one of my figures. The character I'm making today is Albert Batlies. Like how I start off all my sculptures, I just make a foil ball and cover it in clay, and then just make that little clay ball into a nice, really smooth, round base. And then I'm going to add the muzzle, and the muzzle for this character is kind of long, so I'm going to make more of a boxy kind of shape. After I smooth on the muzzle, I'm going to give the face some more shape by adding clay to the top of the head and clay to the sides of the face to make cheeks. It's important to look at your figure from all angles to make sure that they look good from every angle. And so in this case, I added clay to the forehead to make the profile look a little bit more sharp and clean. Now I'm just going to take some Sculpting firm clay and cut out a little pyramid triangle shape and make the nose. I decided to use firm clay because I wanted this area to be more, well, not squishy while I work with it. And next I'm just going to shape out Albert's grin. The easiest way I found to do the grin was to draw out the outline of it and then to use my tools to cut away and further indent where the teeth would be. The eyes are a similar process, just like how I made the smile. I draw out where I want them to be, and then I'm going to cut away and hollow out the insides and make a little indentation for them, just so they look kind of sunken in and more like eyes. It was very helpful to me to have tools of different shapes and sizes to get into different areas of the eyes. I just got these tools from Amazon. I can put a link down below to the exact tools that I'm using if you're interested. Albert has very big, sharp eyebrows, so I'm going to use the firm clay again to make those eyebrows. I cut away at the bottom of his head because I didn't like the roundness of it, but it might have not really mattered because the neck was going to be there anyways. So I just cleaned it up after I cut away from it, and then I'm going to poke a hole at the bottom to make sure there's no air bubbles when I bake, and I pre-bake them for 8 minutes. At this point my camera had died and I wanted to continue moving forward with the sculpt, so I had drew on the eyes and I don't have footage of that. Using that hole I poked through the bottom earlier, I'm going to poke a toothpick through and cut it. And I just do this because I'm going to use this toothpick to help me connect both the head and neck. This funky looking shape I'm about to make is going to be Albert's torso / body area. And I'm going to connect this shape with the neck with a toothpick like before. I've added clay to the body and the rest of the neck, and now I'm just going to hide these headless bodies in the back. That's one of the things that I didn't like about filming Albert, was that I had to pull the camera back so that you could see everything that I was doing, but in doing so I kind of reveal my background, which I did not want to do, so I'm just going to hide it, but it will come back. You will be able to see things in the back because I have to show you Albert. But anyways, what I'm doing now is creating the back end of Albert, and it needs to be larger, so I created this big foil ball, and I'll of course cover it in clay. In my head, when thinking of the figure, I wanted this arch to be here, but looking at it now, I didn't like it, so I'm just going to fill in the arch and change the angle of it. That way I can make more of a rib shape where Albert's, ribs are, right here. And here is our beautiful, bald, limbless boy. who needs some limbs. So what we're gonna do is make a foil base and cover it in clay. And these are going to be his thighs. Now I'm just going to attach them to his body now that they're all done, and bear with me y'all, this is only my second time making a video like this, so I'm going to try something. And oh my god, look at that! Aww. Now I'm just going to make the front arms by making some thick noodles and attaching them to the body. So it was about here that I realized that at the angle I was working at, I was going to have to pull the camera up, and so what I do is I insert that little cookie man into my iPad case and it lifts up the camera, and I'm going to fill in these seams right here and make a connection with the arm and body more stable, and I'm going to do that with my Sculpey Firm Gray clay. I've also just realized that the bodiless heads are back. If you know anything about sculpting, you may have noticed that I did not use an armature for this, and I've never used an armature for my sculptures before, which is not entirely an awful thing, but I mean, I don't know if it's like a sculptor's sin. The way I'm doing it now is just how I happen to learn how to make things. Maybe it would be easier on myself to make an armature. Maybe I can do that in the next sculpture video. One of the positives that I see in using an armature would be that there's probably a lot more stability while sculpting because of that base skeleton underneath. So I don't know, maybe in the future I'll give it a try. As for right now though, the legs are done being sculpted aside from the paws, but these current paws have a problem with them. They have 3 toe beans when they really need to have 4. I then decided it would be a lot easier for me to just remove the limbs entirely so that I could focus on attaching each paw individually. The paws had already been resculpted to the shape that I like better and to have 4 toe beans, and now I'm just going to connect them onto each leg. Detaching the limbs was not exactly a step back because now what I can do is focus on areas that I couldn't get to before, and I'm going to focus on Albert's chest area. I wanted it to be quite sharp, so I'm just going to get underneath what I couldn't before when the legs were attached. Now here's a candid moment of me deciding whether or not I should reattach the limbs or just bake them as is. Baking them now would give Albert an easier time standing up while I still worked on him. This is where the idea of an armature— there's a squirrel outside. No! I was trying to say that an armature allows the stability to already exist. Okay, I don't know what I was gonna say, so we're just gonna move on and I'm just gonna pre-bake these. So basically what happened was I couldn't get Albert to stand on his own in a position that I liked for very long, as well as if I were to bake him like that without baking the limbs first, he would likely collapse onto himself. So I decided to bake the limbs, and now I'm just going to attach them with more clay. After everything is attached smoothly, I'm positioning him more into the way that I like, and then I'm just going to pre-bake him so that I can work on the details. I'm going over Albert and sanding as much as I can, trying to get everything nice and smooth, scraping off any bumps or excess clay. I'm doing a bad job of pointing at the right area, but what I'm trying to do is fix his chest because it's a little bit lumpy, and so I'm just going to scrape it down and keep sanding until it's the shape that I want it to be. There was a lot of sanding and scraping. Here he is again, and here's how he looks with his new sand job. I've tried to make this area more narrow and shapely, as well as his chest has a better shape to it now. Albert's ears are simple enough, they're just wiggly triangles, and one ear has a bite mark taken out of it, so later on I'm going to include that by poking a hole through the ear, poking 2 holes through the ear actually. After the ears are attached, I'm loosely adding hair to him in a funky little shape just because I want to be sure that this idea is going to look well on him. And then once I decide that I like them, I go back and take the hairs and sharpen them a little bit and then put them back to where they were. Not much else happens aside from me adding more hair and fluff, so I'm just going to jump and show you that. The last bit of sculpting that Albert requires are just his claws, and then I'm going to pre-bake. Even though all the sculpting is done, the reason I only pre-baked him and not full-baked him was so that I could continue to sand any small imperfections that I didn't like on him. And now the sculpting portion is 100% complete.
Yippee!
I like to prime the surface of my pieces both to have an easier time painting so the paint has something to cling onto, as well as I can see small imperfections a little bit better with this white coat on them. More sanding of rough areas, and then I'm going to look over the figure and fill in any holes or indents that need to be smoothed out. Whenever I do this, I use this plastic wood filler thing that I just apply on and then sand down once it's dry. I sketch Albert's eyes back on, but they do end up changing directions as I paint them on. Whenever I have to paint a figure and they have a very large area that is one color, I will break out my airbrush, but in this case I didn't do that because the one large color area is a very dark color, and if I were to use my airbrush all over Albert, I would have to paint over the face again, and you know, painting over dark color with a light color takes more coats, so I just decided to do it all with the paintbrush and skip out on the airbrush this time. I could have also just used the airbrush on the body and not for the head, but the thing is, whenever I use my airbrush, the color that comes out is just slightly different from what would come out if I were to paint it on. So they would be, the body and head would be two very slight different shades of gray, and I just didn't want to go through that, so hand painting it with the paintbrush was fine. The initial coat, I don't worry too much about small details and getting into all the tiny cracks. I mean, here I am, but it's kind of a messy job. I just worry more about getting the color on there first, and worry about the details of it later. The first coat of gray that I used for Albert's face ended up drying kind of dark, so I had to go back and use a lighter coat. After I have a good base area covered, I start focusing on the details of one area, and in this case it's going to be the hair around Albert's head. I've painted both the hair around his head and the markings on his ears, and so now I'm just going to work on Albert's facial details. When I first started painting Albert's nose, I mistook the lighter area to go up further on his nose bridge, but what really was going on is it's just the light top of his nose, not the whole nose bridge, so I had to cover that up. Here is the initial paint job that I had for Albert's eyes, but I realized that the color of the eyes wasn't quite right, as well as the whites of his eyes were actually blue. So here is the fixed version. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm just going to add little eye shines, and then I'm going to fix up any areas that need touch-ups, and his paint job is done. I then took Albert outside to give him his protective coat, but what happened was these little white specks kept showing up on his, dark body, so I had to keep filling them in because I didn't want to seal the white specks in there. I was eventually able to become satisfied with the amount of specks that I was able to cover up. Every time I moved my finger, a new speck would show up, so I just kind of kept repainting and spraying. As I was taking this last shot to show him off, it started to rain a little bit, so I just quickly grabbed him and set him back down inside the garage where he was sheltered. These sculptures are slightly waterproof just because they have a protective wood varnish coating on their paint job, so he would have been fine if he gotten wet, but I didn't want to leave him out there like that. Thank you so much if you watched this all the way through, and even if you didn't, even if you just skipped around, thank you for making it to the end. I know this video was a lot longer than the last one I made because Albert is a much bigger sculpture. I have a lot of sculptures that I owe people right now, and I would love to do videos of them, so if you're interested in that, the thumbs up button always helps me know that people like what I'm doing. And if you want to use the thumbs down button, you can let me know why. I won't be bothered because I accept critiques. That'd be cool. Like if you find my voice annoying, I can't do anything about that, but it'd be kind of cool to know. Anyways, thank you again, and a big thank you to the Crane Gang. Bye now.